Bharate ji, Shyam Babu ji, Vivek Prakash, and I think Dr. Shubha Parmar ji and Sunil Jode ji. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to congratulate Chandrabhan Prasad ji for inviting me to this program. So thank you, Chandrabhan ji, for inviting me for this program. And he has requested me to give you a sense of what Tata Group of companies are doing in the area of affirmative action. So I'll give you a glimpse of what we are doing. And like Arunji said, there are challenges, but I think that's the only group which has continued its sustained effort right from the day when Dr. Irani was leading the affirmative action in 2006. So from 2006 to 2019, for the last 13 years, Tata Group is the only group, and I'm very sincere about it, because we want more companies to pick up this idea of affirmative action for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Many companies have taken up this initiative in the beginning, but I think either they have discontinued or they have abandoned those programs in course of time. And I think that's the biggest challenge for this program, that why this program, which is so important from the perspective of Tata, it's an extremely important program. While there can be several arguments why it should be done, why it should not be done, but I think Tata's, like it was mentioned, all along, Mr. Ratan Tata, Dr. J.J. Irani, then Mr. Muthuraman, who headed this affirmative action program for some time, then Dr. N.S. Rajan was there, Mr. Padmanabhan is there. All those people believe that this is the right thing to do. And I think the whole philosophy of Tata is that this is the right thing to do. The Indian society, we cannot see progress of India if we don't care, if we don't take 25% or 300 million people along on the development path. And I think it is so simple that can you think of a country progressing with a section, with a 1/4 of a section which has been kind of left behind? And I think that's a simple thought, that we have to, it's our responsibility to take them along as we are progressing, when we are talking about India as becoming a leading economy of the world and so on and so forth. I mean, you can't think of a country of 25% of the people have been left behind and India becoming a developed country. It's just impossible to imagine about that kind of India. Tata's, as you all know, has been very, very focused towards people and community. I need not reiterate that point. So that philosophy also is always working, that we have to take people, at the end of the day, the money is being made for what? Whatever profit we are making is for what? Profit has got no meaning unless and until it serves the society, or it serves the needs and expectations of the community. This is what our founder said some 100 years back. And I think those are the philosophy which underpin this whole affirmative action program at this point of time. So Tata affirmative action program is running well, I would say. And I'll give you one story of a company's program, not entrepreneurship. Mr. Chandan is there. I mean, he is doing a business with one of the Tata group of companies, Tata Power in particular, and there are many you will be doing business with Tata group of companies. But I think I'm giving you a story of a different shade altogether. So this company is called Trent. How many of you have heard Trent as a company? It has got a retail outlet called West Side. Have you ever visited West Side Mall? So they took up this program that, okay, we will recruit the boys and girls from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, under the affirmative action program. And they recruited almost to the tune of 30 to 40%, and at some of the branches even more than that. And they have been doing so in the last, 7, 8 years or 10 years, so to say. And the study which we have done, recently, when we analyzed the performance of those students, the boys and girls, retail, as you all understand, is a very, very challenging job. 8 घंटे खड़े रहने पड़ते हैं. You have to be very customer oriented. You have to little bit know English, talk to customer in English when you are in Bombay and Delhi and so on and so forth. But I think the study which we did to understand the performance of those boys and girls, every time we are finding that those boys and girls from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe have outperformed the performance of the category of the general people in Indian country. So it's not like you are giving away something. There is a rationale, there is a longevity. We are saying that the longevity of those boys and girls, the stickiness of those boys and girls, maybe because they are more hungry for the job, maybe that their appetite for the job is more, but their performance is better, they are staying more in that company, and in fact we are seeing that they are getting more promotions than the average boys and girls which we take from the general category. So there is all the reasons are there that why we should look at the boys and girls from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. But there is a challenge also. I'll tell you the challenge now. The challenge is that in the whole affirmative action program, which most of the companies are doing, they are not finding enough people. They are not finding enough people. Even the other day we were having a review and conversation with the Trent. They want more boys and girls from in Bombay or in Pune or in Chennai or in Bangalore from a scheduled caste and scheduled tribe background, but they're not getting. They have put in a lot of NGO to get those people from anywhere, but I think you all understand that migration is becoming very difficult, because as a retail outlet, you are not paying much. You are paying maybe 15,000, 20,000, and you can't expect a boy and girl to migrate from Jamshedpur to Bombay to do that work. So we have to get people from there, local, maybe 20 kilometer, 40 kilometer, 50 kilometer from Virar. If people can come and if we are getting people from there, we can recruit those people, but we are not getting people. The same thing happened, in one of the company, Tata Capital. Tata Capital has created a program where they said that to an employer, if I get the right kind of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, CV, we will give you extra 0.5% incentive than what we are giving it to a general category. So suppose for a general category, if one is as a employee data provider, if I'm getting 2%, if I get the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe boy and girl, I'll give you 2.5%. But still, there is a challenge. We are not getting enough. We are not getting enough of those boys and girls. So one of the work, and this is where I little bit kind of have a difference of opinion with Chandrabhanji. he used the word that, Dalit entrepreneurs should not get to ICE. And he has an argument. He has an argument saying that, it should not be more than 20% or 25% and all. Our thinking is that who else will help? Who else will create? Who else will, do the positive discrimination to those boys and girls from scheduled caste and scheduled tribe? If the Dalit entrepreneurs who are today in a position to provide job don't provide job to the SC/ST boys and girls. So in our scheme of things, we say that, at least 50%. If you have become big, if Sunil Jodeji is, driving Mercedes and he is a Mont Blanc pen, then he should aspire to give 50% of, job to the boys and girls of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So it is an ideological difference. It is an ideological difference. I think we can talk about it, but I think the job has to be given. If we are becoming a job provider, we have to provide job to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Just to kind of give you a sense that one of the method which we are using, which kind of work for us, and I'm just giving some sense to Vivek ji, is, it's an execution mechanism, but I think it has worked for TBEM, Tata Business Excellence Model, and I think we have modeled the TAP assessment, so periodic assessment and continuous improvement based on, affirmative action journey to the company. So that's a model which is working pretty well in Tata Group of companies. And we had picked up, the 4E from CII when we started that, framework and all. But I think over the years we have kind of evolved that whole criteria. We have made it much more scientific. Most important thing is to keep on working with the mindset of the senior leaders. Senior leaders, and I'm talking about the CEO in particular. So our job is, at this point of time, is to keep working with the CEO and create a mindset change so that their worldview about scheduled caste and scheduled tribe boys and girls is very different from what they are thinking at this point of time. And I'm very glad to tell you that, we have been able to do that. It's possible because, there's a commitment from the top, there's a commitment from Mr. Tata, there's a commitment from Mr. Chandrasekhar, there's a commitment from all the Tata leadership at this point of time, and we are committed to this whole idea of affirmative action for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So with this, I just want to conclude that in the last few years, we have added some 10,000 boys and girls into our workforce last 4 or 5 years. We have 574 SC/ST vendors have been included in the last 5 years. In FY18 itself, we have given a business of 257 crores to SC/ST entrepreneurship. It's not that big, but I think it's definitely a good story to talk about. We have increased fourfold in our skilling of the people program, and last year itself we have skilled almost 30,400 scheduled caste and scheduled tribe people. We have on education, we have improved sixfold in number of student supports and threefold in the scholarship. In fact, our support to FAEA, many of you will be knowing that Professor V.K. Mehta, erstwhile Delhi University Vice Chancellor, he is heading this FAEA Foundation for Academic Excellence and Access. So Tata is the only group which has consistently supported more than 100 plus scholarship to all the engineering and medical students with FAEA. There are other groups also, but they have been going up and down. Some of them have not, kind of a stood to their commitment. But we are the only group we have committed. We have not only committed, but we have continuously increasing the number of those scholarships for SC/ST students. So, in nutshell, Tatas are committed to the cause of affirmative action for Dalit and Adivasis. We are convinced that there is a layer of social side of it when we are, it's not only the economic, all these debate came on when this 10% reservation proposal came in. So we believe that there is a social layer which has to be understood by all the people, and particularly for the tribal, that issue of neglect has to be understood by the senior leaders of Tata. We are working towards that. The journey is still not complete, but we believe that we are committed and it will go only up, in up direction. So thank you very much, and thank you, Chandrababu. Thank you so much.
Guests on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, and of course my good friend Chandrabahan. It's a great honor to be invited here to participate in the release of this book on Dalit enterprise. You know, as Mr. Khobragade just mentioned, I had interacted with, it was then called Dicky, but I think you've changed your nomenclature and so on.
It's still there.
Still there, okay. You know, when we were preparing for the 12th five-year plan, for the last several years, we had been doing a lot of consultation. Because I think over the previous 20 years, one thing had become clear. You cannot do top-down planning where the central government decides something and then everybody follows. And it was necessary to consult broadly. First of all, there was a lot more technical knowledge outside the government after the reforms than there was inside, because the private sector had expanded. So naturally, if you really wanted to know what's happening, you would talk to them. And we had a standard way of consulting business organizations, FICCI, CII, ASSOCHAM, etc. But I was also aware that, you know, the purpose of the economic reforms is to actually encourage everybody to get into entrepreneurship. And it was Chandrabahan who brought to my attention that a group of Dalit entrepreneurs who had done very well were there, and they were not being consulted. So I asked him to bring along a team. And we met in the Planning Commission, and I have some nice photos of the event. And I'm kind of currently writing my own book, so I should mention this in there. And I must say that it was a very, very educative experience for me, because I think there are many things that they said which were sort of different from what you expect to hear. One of the dominant things they said was that the government has many schemes to help the Dalits, but that's sort of, there are schemes categorized to help the very lowest sections of society. So, for example, if you want to promote self-employment, you have some scheme that gives somebody 25,000 rupees loan. That is okay if you want to start a cycle repair outfit, or you want to buy a stove and a kettle and some utensils and start a snack vending operation or something. But it's not really what you need if you want to get on with business. So now we have, thanks to education, that's the other thing, by the way. I asked them, what government schemes you think have been useful? And virtually all of them said education. All these other yojanas that we used to produce, I don't think they had a high opinion of. But education, yes, the fact that you have access to education, including through affirmative action, that was good. But then what they also said was that imagine to yourself a young Dalit boy who has got the relevant education, and he's a risk taker. I mean, remember, if you are a Dalit and you've got the education and you have got reservations, particularly in government employment, you know, it would be relatively easy to take one of those jobs. And nothing wrong with it. But suppose you have a fellow who is a risk taker, who wants to be an entrepreneur and not just an employee. Then what they said was the world is very different if you're a Dalit compared to a general category person, for the simple reason that, you know, if you're a general category person, the support of the family a little bit. It's not, by the way, that general category families are all that generous, but there's a little more ability to support. Maybe you own a house and your father takes a loan, gives it to you, something. But someone from a lower income bracket just doesn't have that support. So there is no way that they can actually break through into what you would call modern entrepreneurship. And I think you should do something about that. And that's where this whole issue of a venture capital fund, or whatever you may want to call it, came up. And I thought it was a good idea. And they collected some money. And I mean, he said I gave them, I didn't give the money. I mean, I just put in a word in government, but very strongly, that the government should announce that if such a thing happens, we will provide. I think they provided 200 crores or something like that. Chidambaram was very good. I persuaded him to do this. He announced it in the budget speech and it started. Chandrabhan tells me he's doing quite well, so maybe I'll find out more about it. But that was one side of a neglected area. And I think that they also drew attention to the fact that, you know, it's not that government was not sympathetic about the need to help Dalits, but the focus was very much on the bottom, which is a good thing. I mean, if you're right at the bottom, you get some little assistance. But there wasn't a conceptualization that you want to make sure that Dalits are also represented in the successful entrepreneurial class. And actually, true inclusiveness means exactly that. So I'm very happy to hear representatives of the Tata Group sort of saying that is the DNA of the Tata Group. Of course, you know, the Tata Group historically were the original, so to speak, excluded category, because I think it was Tata who wanted to put up a steel mill, and the British guy who had to give permission said, you know, Indians can't produce steel. And then he said, if you produce steel, I'll eat every kg that you produce. Now, he would get a lot of indigestion if he had lived long enough. But it was a good example that, you know, he was aware that there is this discrimination, sort of a glass ceiling that you kind of have to break through. So what I found about Chandrabhan, particularly, I've learned a lot from him, is that, you know, he's doing a lot of the research that makes people understand the human side of transformation. I remember a lot of slogans that Chandrabhan has popularized. One of them is that it is the market and not Marx that will liberate the Dalits, which really annoyed a lot of my left-wing friends. Because, you know, this was felt to be completely wrong. I think he was right, by the way. And I think he's done a lot of research which needs to be more widely known. That, you know, how does caste break down in a system? I mean, it's not breaking down as fast as it should. That's 100% sure. But it is breaking down. And documenting that as human stories is actually very interesting. You know, the nice thing about human stories is that they're not boring. I mean, you give a long table at X% in 19 something, it's gone up by this growth rate, people sort of switch off. But if you tell it as a human story, then I think many more people get involved. And that's really where I think the Dalit Enterprise, the magazine that you've started, might get a story across to many more people than would otherwise get the advantage of it. You know, I have one other suggestion, and that is, this point was made that, you know, want to have an affirmative action program, but we can't find the people. And I think I can understand that that might well be true. Although it's wonderful that your representative in Europe in charge of the whole blockchain business happens to be a Dalit. You know, in a way, one of the very useful things that can be done is to get people when they're young. Because if a person has gone through a discriminatory system, the chances are that a lot of talent has got lost because they haven't been given the support they needed at school. I mean, a good friend of mine used to say that in any group of people, the DNA doesn't distinguish. He said 3% of the people are innovative entrepreneurs. Now, this is an important point, by the way, that everybody is not an innovative entrepreneur. And there's no reason why you should expect them to be. Lots of people just want to do a good job and get trained for it and become employees and keep getting promoted. There are a few people who have the entrepreneurial instinct. And that is not a racial instinct, it's probably just a random thing that in every group there will be 3%. I think Sam Petroda is the one who used this number for me. And I think there's a lot in that. Now the question really is, how do you make sure, just as there are 3% entrepreneurs, maybe there are 5% physicists and 5% doctors, whatever. The only way you can make sure that people come up to their innate potential is if they get a good opportunity in school early on. So I don't know, maybe the corporate sector, which is doing a lot, could think of what they can do at the schooling level to make sure that amongst very young children, many more get an opportunity to do a lot better in school than they otherwise would. And I think that would be something that, it's no use relying on government to do these things, because, government cannot select. The government will say, if you ask any politician, he will say, we must do this for everybody, which is, of course, logically is correct. But we know that we are not going to be able to do it for everybody. Even for the general category, the percentage of schools that are good is actually quite small. So the real issue is if we can't be waiting for Dalits until the whole school system has become very good. So you need to create some little windows where talented children are picked up and given some, I don't know what. I'm not suggesting that you have a separate school. Maybe you can work with other good schools so that you create some special scholarships. I know, for example, that one of the very interesting things which an Indian in America, Mr. Munish Babra, is doing is he goes to the Navodaya Vidyalayas. Now the Navodaya Vidyalayas are a superior kind of, they're residential schools in rural areas. Like Rajiv Gandhi started there. In fact, at that time, he was laughed at because they said these are the rural doom schools. But the fact is they've done actually quite well. And what Mr. Babrai does is that he picks up one or two of these schools and, he's not choosing Dalit children as such, but the percentage of Dalits will be very high in that school because of, it's meant to be for the poor, it's meant to be in rural areas, right? And what he does is he collects, he finances special coaching classes in things like maths and physics and so on. And he goes to, arranges with nearby cities so that you can get a good teacher, university teacher or whatever, to put up a program where those kids who want it get an extra 2 hours coaching also. So, it's voluntary. Since the school is residential, it's relatively easy to do. You just bring the guys over there. And many kids who are not so driven by academic excellence would not do it. Because they'll say, well, look, I've done my usual stuff. I want to go and play football or cricket or whatever. But those kids who want can get that. And I talked to him and, the results he's got are really quite phenomenal in terms of the number of his kids who then get into IITs and all that kind of stuff. So I think we need a little bit of innovative thinking in which actually if you had such a thing, the successful Dalit entrepreneurs who are represented here, they would associate themselves with one such school and sort of go there and talk to the kids. I think one of the great advantages of creating magazines like Dalit Enterprise is you create role models. People sort of look up to someone because they identify with them. Those kind of people can actually go and sort of mobilize enthusiasm amongst young people. So those are just some thoughts. I just want to say that I'm delighted that this Dalit Enterprise is now, magazine has now completed a whole year, and that you produced this rather luxurious looking book. I must say, by the way, I'm a little puzzled that you put a Mont Blanc at the same level as a Mercedes. I mean, is that just to make people feel good? That if you can't get a Mont Blanc, why not can't get a Mercedes, at least start off with Anyway, I think it's good that you're doing this, and thank you for inviting me, and all the very best in your effort to push this endeavor. Thank you.
Truth. Whenever we have these kind of gatherings, we talk about SC, STs. More often it meant only SCs. And we give combined figure 300 million. But most of the time when we go with a chart of demands, we don't really focus on the tribal interests. It's not that we are devious, but we are not really familiar with the specific special challenges tribals face in the area of education and entrepreneurship. One of the ways we thought of changing that dynamic is to give equal importance to tribal entrepreneurs in Dalit Enterprise magazine. As part of that, the current issue is a special issue on tribal entrepreneurs, and hereafter every January issue will be a special issue on them. And to connect all these backward-forward linkages, the research, going and talking to the people, finding who the employees, where these entrepreneurs are located, what kind of sectors they are in, what are the problems they are facing, what kind of policy changes we must advocate. We need a think tank. So this is Chandramanji's idea to create Adi Dalit Business League, ADBL. So it's my honor to launch it. So please give a hand for that. This is a think tank, a non-profit, which will be doing, it is a backbone of the magazine also, which will be providing the research support, which will do surveys, which will be a kind of interface with the government and the media and the corporate world. So thank you very much for that.
नेशनल दस्तक को देखने वालों से अपील है कि वह नेशनल दस्तक के सपोर्टर फॉर्म को भरें ताकि हम सीधे आपसे जुड़ सकें। नेशनल दस्तक की आपसे गुजारिश है कि अगर इसको बचाना चाहते हैं तो नेशनल दस्तक को सब्सक्राइब करने के लिए रेड कलर के सब्सक्राइब बटन को दबाएं, फिर बेल आइकन की घंटी दबाएं। नेशनल दस्तक को बचाने के लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि हर खबर को शेयर करें, लाइक करें, कमेंट जरूर करें।